What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to Days of Future Present, the next crossover that we are going to talk about. But first, we got to jump back over to Uncanny X-Men and cover a three-part story arc that introduces a character that a lot of fans love so much. And that would be Gambit. This is a story arc where it's Gambit's first appearance ever in Marvel Comics, but he also meets up with Storm to help her change back into an adult once again. And so getting into today's video, we do pick up with a young Storm. Now remember, by this point in Marvel Comics, Storm was changed back into a child, but we have no idea how in the world she was changed into a child, because before that, she was just your regular adult, but she had died in battle against the Nanny and Orphan Maker. And so we were left to believe at first that she had died, but then she reappeared as a child. But here's the thing about Storm. She does not remember anything from her past life at all. But on top of that, she has no idea how to control her powers. Matter of fact, she has no idea that she is a mutant. All she knows is that she has these abilities that she can use only sometimes here and there. Now for young Storm, she had also reverted back into being a thief like she was in the early days in her past life. And so we see her being able to break into a house that belongs to a guy who's working for a drug lord in this area, and her goal is to get him caught by law enforcement. Now, while she is leaving, she does somewhat struggle trying to leave with her powers, but after a while, she is able to leave, but she's also able to set the alarms off to bring in the cops to arrest the man. But then as we get into the next page, we do pick up with the Nanny and Orphan Maker. Now, here's the thing. Like I said earlier, the last time we saw Storm as a grown woman, she had died in battle against the Nanny and Orphan Maker. But in that same battle, we were also left to believe that they had also died in battle as well, to only find out that no, they survived somehow. But on top of that, we kind of find out that it was the Nanny who had turned Storm into a child, but we don't know how she did it. But she does tell us why. You see, in that previous story, the Nanny and Orphan Maker were trying to bring the X-Men into their fold under her control, but unfortunately Storm would not let go easily. She would not allow the Nanny to take over. And so for the Nanny, she felt like the only way to make sure to get Storm under her control was to change Storm back into a child, because a child is weaker in the mind than a grown woman. But now we have to jump over to a mall that is actually near the house that Storm robbed earlier in this video, where we do pick up with a group of guys. Now, one of the guys in the group is a detective, and apparently he was called up this morning because the guy that she had robbed earlier was found dead in his house. Now, like I said earlier, that guy was working with a huge drug lord in the area, but his same detective has been working with an FBI agent known as Jacob Reese. Now, Jacob is actually very important, and the reason why? Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you why here in a moment. But apparently Jacob is also hunting down Storm, because Storm is now being blamed for a doctor that was killed in a previous video. And that leads us into talking about Jacob. You see, when it comes to Jacob, he is an FBI agent, yes, but he's also being possessed by the Shadow King. Now, in our earlier video, I have mentioned that the Shadow King is a multiversal being. But I want to say by this point in Marvel Comics, we haven't truly reached that point. You see, in every reality, the Shadow King has a host. In the main Marvel universe, it is Amal Farouk. Now, Amal Farouk is a mutant, yes, but by this point in Marvel Comics, I want to say that they didn't look at Amal Farouk as the Shadow King possessing him, but really more of a mutant who's calling himself the Shadow King. But he also possesses other people to have those people do anything he wants them to do. So later on, it's going to be retconned that the Shadow King is actually a multiversal being. But either way, when it comes to Jacob Reese, he is currently being controlled by the Shadow King. And of course, Jacob is trying to find Storm. And what he did was he killed off a doctor in our previous video, but blamed the death of that doctor on Storm to say this young girl is wanted. She's a mutant and a killer. We gotta go get her. Now there was another doctor there, and her name was Lian Shin, but Lian Shin is also now being possessed by the Shadow King. And so now these two characters are trying their best to find Storm. And really, when it comes to Jacob, it seems that currently he's the main person being controlled by the Shadow King. When it comes to Leanne, it's a tad bit different. Like, yes, she is being controlled by the Shadow King, but he was also able to bring out a different kind of woman. Somebody she tried to not be growing up. And so because of that, she's automatically trying her best to follow all of his directions. But at the same time, she's still being controlled by him. Now, you also have Val Cooper there. Now, when it comes to Val Cooper, she works in the White House. Her main goal is to handle all kinds of problems that involve mutants and superpower beings. But you have the Shadow King also now controlling her mind. And he wants Val Cooper to kill off Mystique. Now, we don't know truly why, but apparently he said Mystique is, on his hit list, and she is causing him a lot of problems. She gotta go. And so again, with Val Cooper being under his control, you have Val begin to head over to the home of Mystique. But now we are able to jump over to Storm. Now, when it comes to Storm, she found a place to live in, an old military base that was shut down a while back. Matter of fact, it's really more of a junkyard for planes they can no longer use in the military. Now for Storm, this is great because now she has a place to live. But unfortunately, her mind sometimes goes wild, her imagination. And the reason why I say unfortunately, because she begins to have a flashback about her parents. And it seems that she may be remembering who her parents were, or beginning the process of remembering her past life. Now, in this flashback, everything is going great, really, until her dad begins to turn evil, begins to turn into the Shadow King, and her mom begins to change as well, but into the Nanny. And so like I said, for Storm, it's kind of like she begins to remember some things about her past life, but at the same time, she also knows there are two different people after her, the Shadow King and the Nanny. Now, she also sees these visions of her past life being an X-Men, but again, she has no idea who they are or who she was in her past life. But now we have to jump over to the Shadow King. Now, when it comes to Shadow King, he's still possessing Jacob, but he's also letting Jacob use different kinds of powers. Now, when it comes to Jacob, he's also setting up a trap for Storm because he got word that Storm has gone back to her old ways again, being a thief again. Now, when it comes to Jacob, he knows the owner of this house that he has taken over had a huge art collection, and he knows that he can use that art collection as a way to bring Storm over here. Now, we also see that Jacob has turned the owners of the home and their bodyguards into hounds. Now, we have talked about hounds before on this channel, but way back in the Days of Future Past story arc, where hounds are people who are being used by somebody else to go after someone else. So for example, in Days of Future Past, hounds were mutants who were being controlled to go after other mutants. Now, these homeowners, they're not mutants, but when it came to the Shadow King, he was able to alter their minds to turn them into wild animals in their heads to become true hounds, to go after Storm. Once she arrived, they're going to get the jump on her. And really, as soon as Storm arrived, well, those hounds, they got the jump on her. And so it does seem like the Shadow King is finally getting what he wanted for a very long time, which was Storm, because now she is in his grasp. But now we jump over to Uncanny X-Men number 266, where we do pick up with Storm trying her best to dodge all the different attacks that are coming after her by the hounds. Now, when it comes to Storm, she's doing a good job dodging those attacks, but you have the Shadow King just waiting for the right time, because he knows that once her defenses are down, he'll then be able to attack her mind. And so really, he does wait for a good while, and then when the moment comes, he tries to attack her mind. Now for Storm, she does fight back against his attack, and once again, her powers activate. Now, let's not forget, when it comes to Storm, she still has no idea how to truly control her powers, but she was able to use her powers to attack the Shadow King, which of course made him stop attacking her mind, and she was thrown out of the building to a lower area of the mansion. Now, right after landing, that is when she's found by somebody else, somebody who is going to help her. But now we have to jump over to the Nanny, because she was trying to find Storm, and she was able to locate Storm because Storm used her abilities, but so did the Shadow King. And once she realized the Shadow King is also at the same location that Storm is at, oh man, you have the Nanny freak out, because she knows how evil the Shadow King truly is. Now, we have no idea what kind of past those two characters have with one another, but we can see right here that she is so scared of the Shadow King that she warns Orphan Maker to stay away from him. You have no idea how evil he is. You have no idea what he could possibly do to you. But now we have to jump over to Storm. Now, when we last saw her, she was saved by somebody. Guys, you already know who it was. It was Gambit. This is the first appearance of Gambit in Marvl Comics. His first full appearance as well. But when it comes to Gambit, he saved her. Now for Storm, she has no idea who he is, but she can tell that he's also a thief just like her. Now for our heroes, they believe that they're in a safe spot from the hounds, the Shadow King, and also Leanne. To kind of find out that that's not true at all. Matter of fact, they're confronted by the hounds once again. Now for Gambit, this gives us our first look at his abilities. Now, for me personally, this was the first time seeing his powers being used, but also being colored in green. Usually when I see Gambit in TV shows, movies, or even like comic books, is always purple. So I was kind of shocked to see it be green. Either way, you do see Gambit using his powers in front of Storm, but as a way to protect her from the hounds. But then he is confronted by Leanne. Now this is Chris Claremont showing us that Gambit is a ladies' man. Like, he is able to talk the talk to get most women to kind of fall in love with him. And so for Leanne, even though she's being controlled by the Shadow King, a part of her is kind of falling, not in love, but being attracted to Gambit and kind of listening to his words and getting distracted. But while you had Gambit talking, well, Shadow King was still in the room, and you have Shadow King attack Gambit. Now you do have Storm use her abilities as a way to cause a huge distraction to allow Gambit to escape, but to grab Storm to find a way out of there. Now luckily for Storm and Gambit, Storm brought a parachute, and they used the parachute as a way to get away from the mansion. But now we have to jump over to Val Cooper. Now when it comes to Val, let's not forget, the Shadow King told her, hey, I need you to go ahead and kill off Mystique. And so she heads straight over to the home of Mystique. But here's the thing, Mystique knew that Val Cooper was coming because Destiny, her now dead girlfriend, wife, whatever, had told her, hey, listen, in the future, Val Cooper is going to try to shoot you. And Destiny left that on a letter that Mystique found. And with that letter, Mystique knew that Val Cooper was coming. And so when Val walks in, you have Mystique all like, hey, I knew you were coming, so how is this going to end? In the last page for this chapter, we see a gunshot fired, and we're left to wonder, is Mystique dead? And so as we dive into the final chapter for today's video, we actually pick up with Leanne right now with the hounds in the same junkyard that Storm was hiding out at earlier in this video. As a matter of fact, when it came to Gambit and Storm, they went there after being able to escape the mansion. Now, when it comes to Leanne, she does have her own personal goals when it comes to finding Storm and Gambit. You see, like I said earlier, Gambit has his way with women, and so for Leanne, she kind of want to see Gambit again. But you didn't have the Shadow King tell her, I'm gonna need you to make sure you don't hurt Storm. The other guy, yeah, whatever. But Storm, do not hurt her. But for Leanne, she's kind of like, I got other plans for Gambit down the road. Now, when it comes to Gambit and also Storm, they're trying to find a way out of the junkyard to put some distance between them and also the forces of the Shadow King. Now, for Storm, she does have an idea. That idea is to use a plane, but let's not forget that all planes in this junkyard are officially dead. But for Storm, she said, listen, I can use my abilities to hopefully carry the plane across the country to put some distance between us and them. But let's not forget that Storm still has no idea how to properly control her powers. But at this time, they don't have a choice really. Now, while you have Storm trying her best to use her abilities, well, that is the moment you have the hounds being able to find them. Now, Gambit is able to take care of the hounds to give Storm long enough to use her abilities to actually make the plane fly, and they are able to get the heck out of that junkyard. But now we have to backtrack, and here is the reason why. So the next section is going to explain how Storm is alive again, how Storm was turned into a child, but also how Orphan Maker and the Nanny are also alive again as well. You see, while you have Gambit and Storm trying to fly the plane, they were once again attacked, but this time by the Nanny. And you have the Nanny explain everything to us. So now we have to backtrack. And so you have the Nanny tell us that what happened in the middle of the battle was that she had switched out Storm with a life model decoy. Now, a life model decoy is just a super advanced robot that looks so real that you would believe is actually a real person. But in reality, it's not. And so in the middle of the battle, she was able to grab Storm and replace Storm with a life model decoy. And so when Havoc had shot Storm and also the ship of the Nanny and Orphan Maker, we were left to believe that Havoc had killed off Storm. But in reality, he had killed off a life model decoy. But for the X-Men, it looks so real that they had believed that Storm had died. Now that explains almost everything for Storm, but how in the world was the Nanny and Orphan Maker able to get away from that crashed ship? And she said, listen, I had released a smaller version of my main ship, and so when Havoc had shot that ship and believed that he had hit us and we had died in the crash, in reality, we flew away in our bigger ship. Now, when it comes to Nanny and Orphan Maker, they also say that when it came to Storm, they were able to turn her back into a child because when it came to the Nanny, she realized Storm's willpower was just too strong because she is an adult. But if you were able to change her back into a young child, her willpower is not as strong as an adult. And so she has a device that allows her to turn people back into smaller children, like Storm is right now. Now, after you have the Nanny tell everything over to Storm and also Gambit, you didn't have our heroes being able to get away from the Nanny and Orphan Maker, and they head over to Gambit's hideout. Now, the rest of the book is really more of Storm and Gambit being able to build a bond with one another, but also beginning the process of turning Storm back into an adult, but to also get her back on the X-Men, to put the X-Men back together. And so we jump over to Gambit and Storm arriving in New Orleans, where Gambit works out of, and also he has a hideout. Now, as soon as you have the two guys arrive there, they begin to work together a lot as two thieves who are partners in crime, and they grew that bond very fast, and they were able to hit a lot of different targets in New Orleans. And so for a while, everything seemed great for Gambit and Storm until Orphan Maker and the Nanny were able to find them again. And they were able to grab Gambit. Now, right after grabbing him, you then have Storm being able to sneak onto the ship. Now, with her doing that, she begins to walk around to hopefully find something that could possibly help her to save Gambit from the Nanny and Orphan Maker. But while walking around, she finds the device that was used on her to turn her back into a child. And as soon as she sees it, bam, just like that, she remembers everything from her past life. And so now she knows who she is, the X-Men, everything about her. But first, she has to save Gambit before she's able to leave. And so you then have Storm being able to find a battle suit. Use the battle suit to fight against Orphan Maker and also the Nanny. Now, because of the battle, you then have the entire system of the Nanny ship begin to go haywire to the point where the ship begins to crash in a nearby swamp. Now, after the crash, we're left to believe that only Storm and Gambit has survived. We don't know about the Nanny and Orphan Maker, but for right now, who cares? But after the crash, you then have our two heroes being able to get out of the swamp. But then Gambit realized that Storm is no longer talking like a young child, but now like an older woman, a grown woman. And he realized that there's something different about her, that she's completely changed. And she says, yes, I remember everything. Yes, you and I, we can continue to work together. But first, I have a question for you. Have you ever heard about the X-Men? And this is where the book ends. And so guys, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.